my channel. So I know it's been a super long time since I've posted a sit down video like this, but today I'm back and I thought I'll show you guys a super quick, easy DIY video tutorial on how to make these super cute, I say super a lot, anyway, these super cute ombre dip dyed socks. So I think they look so cute, so I had to share them with you guys. I was actually inspired by this photo that I saw on Hypebae, and they had this different colored hand dyed socks, and I thought to myself, like, that's pretty easy to do, so I thought I'll show you guys. And I put my own little twist to it as well, and I decided to do like a ombre effect, and I think it worked out really well, so I'm excited to show you guys how to do it. Now, you don't necessarily need to do these on Nike socks, you can do it on any other socks, and I would highly recommend experimenting on cheaper socks before you jump into, like, I mean, these are not super expensive, but they are, I think, $25 for 3 pairs, and if you mess them up, then you will have a very uncute pair of Nike socks. So just experiment on cheaper socks, and then once you're confident with what you're doing, then you can go ahead and dye your Nike socks. And you can obviously dye any kind of socks that you like. So if you have plain Adidas socks or any other brand, that would be really, really cute. But I wanted to do Nike socks specifically because I feel like Nike just doesn't make super cute socks, and every time I go to a Nike store, I'm always on the hunt for cute socks because I just feel like cute socks really makes a pair of sneakers look better, if that makes any sense. I guess it kind of accessorizes the sneaker in some way. I'm always on the hunt for cute Nike socks, but they just don't have it, so I thought dyeing your own socks would be such a great idea. And if you guys want to know how to make these socks, then this is how you do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing you're gonna need is a bowl that's big enough to fit the socks that you're gonna be dyeing. And today I'm just gonna be dyeing these Nike socks. You'll also need some gloves so your hands don't get stained. So now we're gonna fill the bowl with water. The instruction calls for hot water, but I'm not really sure how hot it's meant to be. What I usually do is I just mix some tap water. So here I have about 2 cups. Again, it doesn't really matter. And then I have my kettle over here, and I'm just gonna pour in some hot water. You don't want the water to be too hot that you can't handle it, but I think you want it hot enough so that you can actually dissolve the dyes in there. And the first step you need to do is to wet the socks because it needs to be damp when you dye it. So I'm just gonna pop them in this bowl, make sure it's all saturated. I'm gonna wring them out and set it aside. It is now time to make the dye solution. So apparently when you dye cotton, you're meant to add some salt because it helps the dye, I think, work better with the material. I have no idea. So I'm just gonna pour some salt in there. This is just like regular salt I got from the supermarket, and I don't really have a measurement for this. I just kind of pour quite a bit into it. I also read that it is good to add a drop of detergent in there. I think, again, it is to help with the dyeing process. So I'm gonna put a drop of detergent in there, and then you just want to give it a good stir. So it is now time to add the dye. So I have 2 kinds of dyes to show you guys. They are from the same brand, but one is in a liquid form and one is in a powder form. So I'm going to show you guys both of them today. I find that the liquid one is a lot easier to use, so I highly recommend picking up the liquid if you can, but if you can't, you can also use the powder. The liquid one is a little bit more expensive. I think this was about $18 or $19, whereas the powder one is about $8, but for convenience sake, I would definitely recommend getting the liquid instead. And the color that I'm doing today is teal. We're going to add some of this dye into the water, but before we do that, you need to give it a good shake. And we're just gonna pour the dye into the water. The amount you pour into the water really depends on how dark or light you want it to be. Usually just pour it into the spoon and just add drops as I go, just in case I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm gonna give that a quick stir just to see whether the color is what I want. Now, it's hard to tell when it's just like that. So the best way to test if it's the color that you want is to just use a paper towel, and then I usually just dip it into the dye, and that will kind of show you whether that's the color you want. So I feel like it might be a little bit too light, so I'm going to add a little bit more dye. So just adding a little bit more. Again, it's always better to go little by little because you can always just add more if you want it to be darker. But if you happen to add too much and you find that it's too dark, you can just add more water and it will just make it lighter. So I'm going to test on this other end to see whether it's the color that I want. So that is what it looks like. I think that looks good. So here comes the exciting part. We can start dyeing our socks. Gonna chuck the whole thing in there. So what you want to do is just leave it in the solution, give it a good massage and make sure everything is submerged in this dye. Another thing you can do if you want more of an ombre look is to just dip the top of the sock into the solution. You'll find that the dye will just creep up onto the sock. So you can see it's slowly absorbing. So depending on how much ombre you want, you can just dip it a little bit more or less. I usually just leave it like that for a couple of seconds and you just naturally create an ombre effect, and I think it looks really cute. So if you want to just leave it like that, you can. So you just wring out the excess dye, and what I usually do is I'll just set it aside and I'll just let it, I was gonna say marinate, I'm just let it do its thing here, and then we'll get back to it later. So on second thought, I feel like I want a pair of socks that's actually the same color. So instead of leaving this ombre, I'm just gonna dip the whole socks into the dye as well. But like I said, if you just want to leave it like that, you can. And then I'll show you what to do later. But for today, I'm gonna put the whole socks in this. As you can see, this has been soaking in there for much longer, and this has gone a lot darker compared to the one I just put in, but eventually it will end up looking the same. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave this in here and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes that I've left the socks in the dye solution, and this is what we have. I think it looks pretty good. So what we need to do is just wring it and get all the excess water and dye out of the socks, and then I'm just gonna set them aside here. So as you can see, guys, this is like super simple and pretty straightforward. So if you ever dyed anything before, that's pretty much how you do it. I've only learned this recently, and I just think it's really fun, especially because like I think each time you do it, it's never gonna end up the same because it depends on like how much dye you put and stuff. So for now, I'm just gonna set them aside here on this rack to just drip dry. So now I'm gonna show you guys how to do the ombre effect. So meaning I'm gonna make this section here a little bit darker and fade to this lighter teal color. So I'm gonna make another dye solution. So I'm just gonna get a smaller bowl, and we're pretty much gonna repeat the steps that we did before. Back to the same dye, I'm just gonna give it another shake, and because I want it darker in the top, it means that I'm gonna need to put more of the dye into that so that you can see the difference. So I'm gonna put more than I did before. I don't really remember, but I feel like that is definitely more than before, and this time around as well, you can see there's way less water in the bowl, so that means the dye is a lot more concentrated. So that actually looks really dark, but that's what we want because we want the ombre to fade from dark to light. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be dipping the very edge of the socks into the solution like so. As you can see, the dye is absorbing into the socks and it kind of naturally gives it like an ombre effect. But what I do as well, you just gotta dip it like up and down like that, and yeah, that is pretty much how it's done. It's very simple. This is what it looks like for now. I think that looks really cool, and I usually just set it aside to just let the dye soak into the sock. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side as well. I'm just gonna set it aside to let the color soak in, and then now I'm gonna show you guys how to do the powder one. Okay, so moving on to the powder dye. If you guys are not interested in knowing how to do the powder one, I'll just leave a timestamp here so you can skip to the part to know what to do with the socks we just dyed. But for now, we're gonna talk about the powder dye. The color I'm using today is called Petal Pink. I think it's a really cute color. It's pretty much the same thing as what we did before, so we're just gonna need some warm water in our bowl. I have some water from my kettle, and this is boiling water, so I'm gonna do half boiling water. The other half I'm just gonna do just regular tap water. Like before, we're just gonna wet the socks in our warm water. Powder dye, there's just one additional step. So I've got a smaller bowl over here, and what I'm gonna do is inside this box, it comes in a little packet like this, and I'll just pour however much a little dye I want into the bowl. If I want like a light pink color, then you probably don't want to put too much of the color. In this bowl, I'm just gonna add a little bit of hot water. just to dissolve the dye. I'm just gonna stir it. I noticed that if you don't do this part and you pour it directly into your dye solution, the dye can be a little bit chunky and just leave your socks looking very uneven. So I highly recommend doing this step if you're using the powder dye. Just make sure you mix it really well. We're gonna pour in the solution, but just little by little again, just like before, because you kind of want to gauge what color you get. And make sure you give it a really good stir because of the powder. You just want to make sure it's all dissolved and there's no like chunky little bits of dye. Like before, you can just submerge your socks into the dye solution. So I'm gonna put the other sock in as well. So right now I'm just massaging my socks and I'm gonna leave this for about 20 minutes or so, I say, just like before, and I'll be right back. And I've given this about 20 minutes to soak in the dye, so it's time to just wring this out. This is what the color looks like at the moment. I think it looks really great. Almost brighter than I expected, but I feel like once we wash it, it might be a little bit lighter. So for this particular pair, I'm gonna try and do a different colored ombre on the top of the sock. So I've already prepared some purple dye because we already know how to mix the dye. I don't need to show you guys. That's like quite a deep purple that I'm using, and honestly, I haven't tried this before, so fingers crossed this goes well. So once you're happy with the color, I'll just leave the socks here to let the color sink in a little bit more. I'll just probably leave it for like an hour or so. So once you're done with dyeing your socks and you've set them aside for a bit, now you can go ahead and rinse them. And all you want to do is rinse them with cool water. You don't need any soap at this stage. You just need to rinse them with cool water until the water runs clear. So essentially all the excess dye is no longer in the sock. Once you're done rinsing them, you can go ahead and pop them in the washing machine. Now I would recommend not washing them with any light colored clothing or whites. So just wash them with similar colors, because during the first few washes it tends to just run a little bit still. So if you do wash them with lighter colored clothing, like it might stain the other clothing and ruin them. So you don't want to do that. So just wash them with similar colors, and then once it is done and dried, this is what it looks like. So it actually turned out a little bit lighter than I expected, but I still think it looks really cute. And if you want it to be darker, you can obviously just make the dye a lot darker when you are dyeing your socks. I read somewhere that they sell this thing that helps the colors stay onto the item a lot better, but I couldn't find it. But I'll put a picture over here. If you guys can find it, you should probably use that, because it was recommended by the website to use that, but then I didn't use that, and maybe that's why my socks ended up being a little bit lighter. But I'm not mad at it. I still think it's really cute. It's more of a pastel-y color, not like a vibrant color, but I know for next time if I want like a vibrant color, then I'm gonna put a little bit more dye into the solution to make it darker, and then when I wash it, it'll be the color that I want it to be. I hope that makes sense. I just think it's so fun to experiment with different colors, and the cool thing is that depending on what colors you get and what colors you combine together, you can always get a different color kind of socks and kind of one of a kind in a way. And you can also experiment with different ways you want to ombre the socks, so you don't necessarily have to do exactly what I've done. You can always do different color combinations. For example, you can do like an orange and you can fade into the pink. I think that would look really cool as well. And again, you can do this on any sock, but just be aware of the material the sock is made of, because the dye reacts differently to different materials. So it's probably easier to dye things that have a higher cotton percentage, so you just want to check like what your socks are made of. But with these Nike socks, they're majority cotton, and then I think there's a little bit of like elastane to keep the socks like stretchy. If you're planning on just doing Nike socks, then you know that it definitely works. But again, just check what your socks are made of and then check the dye. There's a lot of tips on the RIT dyeing website if you guys are interested. This is in no way sponsored by RIT, by the way. It's the only dye that I could find in my store, and it seems to work really well. So yeah, I hope you guys give this a go. If you did, don't forget to leave a comment below and let me know how you went. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys really soon. Bye!